Alright y'all, here we are, the very last video of 2023 list season. First off, I want to thank you all for checking out my previous 2023 videos. Definitely felt like I got some solid work done this past month, and I hope you've taken away some real good stuff from it all. And if you haven't watched my other videos, well, you don't get any of my thanks. Go ahead and remedy that so you can stay in my good graces. Anyway, yeah, this is a video I think I've been the most excited about making all season. I poured a ton of my energy into listening to as much cool, interesting music as I could find in 2023, and it has been ridiculously fulfilling. I probably listened to more new albums and singles this year than in any other previously, and so much of it was so good. And now here I am, wrapping up the best into one neat package. Well, attempting to anyway. In case you didn't watch my last upload, let me catch you up to speed. Out of the huge mountain of music I discovered this past year, I painstakingly narrowed down what I believe to be my top 100 songs of the year, as it currently stands. This does not include any of the hits I talked about in my best hits of the year, and is also limited to 2 songs per artist to offer more variety. I've previously shown the bottom 75 songs of that list, and now here I am revealing the cream of the crop, my very favorite tracks of the year. As always, if any of these songs stand out to you in any particular way, or if you have anything to say about the music of 2023, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. There's so much I love from this year that can hardly be summed up in even 100 songs, and I'm absolutely eager to further the conversation. Anyway, let's stop stalling and wrap this baby up. These are my top 25 songs of 2023. Starting off this list with the only artist here who overlaps with my best hits of 2023. Spoilers for that, I guess, but you really should have watched it by now. It's so good. Anyway, the singles run from Pink Panthers leading up to her debut album was pretty impressive. Mosquito was one track that just missed my main 100. She's simply one of the most promising young artists we've got right now, and Capable of Love is, so far, her masterpiece. Her usual liquidy dance rhythms are softened to a more alternative sound, with cloudy guitars and punctuated percussion that feel almost dream pop in nature. It's just so cool hearing her going from something as firm and sassy as Boy's a Liar into a song that is far more vulnerable, even melancholic in her profession of uncertainty over this budding relationship she's in. The way she sings the word you in the chorus feels like it's really trying to float off the page, as if her feelings are just too profound to be captured in a mere 3.5 minutes. And the moment where the final verse transitions to the hook with these up-tempo drum patterns shifting into a halftime rhythm mirrored by grungy guitars, man, that is just something else. Pink Panthers is well on the way to changing the music world, and with songs as lush and beautiful as this, more power to her. I confess, I almost didn't end up listening to this album at all this year. There's just too much music out there, and try as I might, a lot of it tends to just fall through the cracks for me. But Svalbard's The Weight of the Mask came out right when there was a lull in my listening activity. I had time, so sure, why not? And, well, I won't lie, I knew right from the album's opening track that this was bound to be something really special. Faking It is, like a lot of the album, driven by this incredibly strong melodic bass, much further pumped up by a powerful rhythm section and seething, absolutely brutal vocal performance. And the mood here is one of anger, yes, but an anger bolstered by a deep-seated depression, introducing the mask of the album's namesake, worn to continue the speaker's facade of positivity necessary to merely exist in polite society. The song sounds huge, plain and simple, but it also carries this air of significance, with an emotional thrust that affirms its beating heart behind this wall of sound. It's an instantly exhilarating rush, an adrenaline shot straight to the bones, and a fantastic taste of the powerful, impassioned blows yet to come on the record. Along with this though, it's confirmed to me that Svalbard is a name I've got to keep on my radar from now on. Great stuff like this just cannot be missed. In putting together this list, I think what's been most challenging for me is pulling out separate pieces of consistently great albums and figuring out why these tracks, out of all the others, stand out in their own way. Like, After the Magic in its entirety is just so magnificent and, well, magical from start to finish, and I can't really think of any particular moments that falter in this regard. But in terms of just the plainest, most splendid depiction of its beauty across multiple shifts and dimensions of sound, I can think of few better examples than Arrival, which comes at the part of the record where the mood really takes off. The delicacy of its first half is already just so wonderful, with its magnificent layering of blown-out guitars, cinematic pianos, and light horns that all bring so much warmth to the shoegaze atmosphere. And yet this is elevated even further in the track's second half, where every one of these elements are cranked up to the heavens. We get this tremendous wall of sound that seems to grow ever higher as we move further down in time. This explosion gives an additional weight in the wailing of both its guitars and lead vocalist. The end result is truly enrapturing, almost overwhelmingly so, and it is this particular moment of propulsion that makes it stand out so well amongst the rest of After the Magic. This is one track here that always makes me feel so euphoric with every listen, and that isn't bound to change anytime soon.
Spending nights with you, dancing, hand in hand with you,
But yet, as much as I do love songs that throw everything against a wall to create such striking, emotional skyscrapers of sound, I often just as well appreciate artists who can, on the contrary, pull everything back and craft something just as significant. Sampha plays around with the soul and R&B genres in some very creative ways throughout Lahai, and while so much of it is very slick in its own ways, it's dancing circles that's had me the most mesmerized. It's in that lone piano line that threads through the surreal narrative of the song, itself moving in its own circular patterns that never breaks down as much as it ebbs and swells along the emotional arc. Sampha here is the conductor of his own stream of consciousness, tenderly reminiscing on the pleasant moments he's had with an estranged former lover. And throughout all this, the song dangles on this anticipatory atmosphere so skillfully, smoothly rotating around this delicious tension, and when it finally breaks into its soft, skittering beats at the climax, man is it just golden. It's all the best feelings one can have remembering the good times of the past. All of its charms are relatively subtle, but it's also the track I believe demonstrates the appeal of Sampha better than most, and God, I just love it so much. Chris Farren in the top 25 is kind of a funny foreshadow of what's to come. If you know, you know. Anyway, I want to emphasize that Chris Farren's Doom Singer has been such a cozy comfort listen for me this year. It's all about the sharp as hell power pop melodies sprinkled throughout the record, pulling from a variety of sonic influences such as psychedelic pop and slacker rock. But where the rest of the record moves particularly lightly on its feet, Cosmic Leash is defined by that heavier, sludgier guitar sound, which is more than offset by that incredible hook that reaches for the heavens in spite of the weightiness. It just rips so incredibly hard, transforming the pleasantry of its quieter chords to something grand and purely visceral. And well, to me, this reads like a shift to personal reinvention. The speaker looking back at the life they have lived and then concluding that, well, their heart is too full, their desire to grow too great to stay in that static, comfortable position for much longer. The Cosmic Leash can be stabilizing, but it can also be oppressive, and it's really what we make of this dichotomy that's most important. And this read spoke to me a lot this year. Truly one of my most replayed tracks this year, and for a damn good reason. Also, yeah, there's something about this post-chorus melody that really attracts me, and I'm not quite sure what it is. It's probably nothing. Great song.
like aiming arrows at my eye, scraping the skin off my thigh.
In my Best Albums video, I mentioned that Kara Jackson's Why Does the Earth Give Us People to Love works primarily as a poetry record set over music, and, well, yeah, that's still true. But I think there's also no denying how terrific of a storyteller Jackson is as well. The album track Rat is a great example of this. I highly recommend that one. But we could also hear it in the title track, which works as a heavy contemplation about the quiet brutality of death and the marks it leaves on us, the living. The storytelling here is, at first, much wider in scope, as she muses on society's perception and treatment of death as a concept. But then later on, she narrows that scope to the personal, instead directly addressing a friend of hers who died of illness. She solemnly remarks on the plans they had made for their future together, while also describing the harrowing experience of watching their bodies slowly wither away. It is at this point where the song becomes less about these universal ideas and transforms into a therapeutic session. Why must she grow so bonded to this beautiful friendship, only for it to be taken away so cruelly? And the conclusion to be drawn is, well, death waits for no one, but for her friend at least, she'll continue to make art and music in their honor. I've said this before, but yeah, this was one of the very few songs this year to make me cry from the very first listen. This kind of dark, sentimental beauty just cannot be overlooked, and I'm very grateful I found it.
ever love me. In every season, pledge allegiance to my heart.
I told y'all not to ask me about the Sufjan Stevens album, and that's because, I didn't really connect with it that much. I mean, I'm glad so many people did, but, well, I did warn you when I said I never really loved much of his work. But not to dwell in the negativity for too long. Man still knows how to get me right in the feels from time to time, and God is this track just gorgeous. I'm an absolute sucker for songs that bear such sentimental vulnerability for all the world to see, tearing open one's heart and inviting us to gaze at the pieces working within. In Stevens' case, it's the winding of self-flagellation in the face of that turbulent quest to find a soulmate, so to speak. Because to remain willing and desperate to love is to also endanger oneself to the stabs of betrayal and heartbreak. This aching, all-consuming desire for romance upon which we often find ourselves, well, it's painful. And yet, even with this pain, we can still reinvigorate ourselves and carve out some beauty from it all. All this is heard and certainly felt in the beautiful richness of strings, choir, and electronic elements that entwine and turn these overwhelming feelings into something new. And it's this particular subversion of it all, turning these dark and desperate thoughts into a glorious floral display. Well, that's the kind of music I most anticipate in these very dark days. It's all just incredible, honestly.
Simple is anyone out there love me?
The growing trend of bedroom pop has transformed, for us, the general idea of what a pop star can look like these days. It feels like now, more than ever, these lines that segregate the world of the celebrity spectacle from that of a regular old human being have become blurred, almost past recognition. And with it comes a greater sense of relatability between us and the music makers. The spectacle is still there, but it no longer feels like an entirely separate world, at least not as much as before. And it's here wherein we enter the domain of Hemlock Springs. Is there anyone out there to love me? She sings so clearly, so bluntly, and well, how could we not relate? Hell, it's not too far separated from the feelings of desperate longing in that last entry I talked about. The dance beats surrounding her are slick and twinkly, taking a number of twists and turns, swells and contractions, but it's ultimately her that we're hearing, her that we're feeling. With every drum beat and synth adornment, not to mention the introspective longing of its lyrics, this song desperately wants to be heard, to be seen, as if Springs is actively making an effort not to become drowned in the millions of voices echoing her exact thoughts. Simply put, it's a bedroom pop cut that continues to cling tightly onto that typical flashy spectacle of pop music, creating something entirely distinct out of these pieces. And boy, are we all the better for it. So way back in my best of halfway through 2023 list, I mentioned that I included this very Rustin Kelly song as a placeholder for damn near any other track from The Weakness, and who knows, maybe a different song would grow to eventually become my true favorite from this year. As you can see, this ended up not quite being the case. As it turns out, yeah, it was always going to be this track. The hazy, melancholic sound of the record is certainly present here, as is Kelly's gloomy yet personable vocal performance and these sharp as hell melodies. But of course, it's the content that really gets to me. I'm either shooting a bullseye or trying to miss is such a succinct way of capturing a very particular interior circumstance. That deep understanding that the difficult legwork is necessary in order to make those improvements one chooses for themselves. But then there's also the familiarity of the self-doubt, the comfortability in the struggle that makes these very moves a Sisyphean ordeal in and of itself. And that constant pressure that we place on ourselves to become quote-unquote better than we currently are, whatever that may entail, well, that defines daily living for so many of us. And failure is often imminent. It's certainly not easy. But when we're trying our best, well, sometimes that's just fine. And hearing this all vocalized so powerfully, well, that's bound to get me in ways most songs don't. It's a special one for sure. I've been a fan of Lana Del Rey for about a decade, and while she's the kind of artist about which damn near everyone has an opinion, I don't think enough is said on how ambitious she can be. A trait that is carried on through nearly every album of hers. Even if her sonic experiments don't always work, well, they're undoubtedly experiments that only she could pull off, and that's so cool. Enter A&W, which, yeah, even after all we've heard from Lana, it's no surprise that this one turned so many heads this year. The rudimentary methods she used to record her vocals result in this very unique unique, unclean feeling to the track. In the first half, she drunkenly slides across these spare chords and percussion while mourning over a childhood lost and remarking on her eventual shift to, as she puts it, the American whore. A woman viewed by the world as little more than a commodity, so much so that she's internalized this herself. But then herein lies the aforementioned ambition of Lana, because I absolutely love when she gets weird as all hell, and that's exactly what the second half is. Where before the mood was deep despair and despondency, we then get a release, a surrender to the spiral of depravity, threaded by trap beats and surreal vocal manipulation. This whole song is utterly unhinged, and I'm absolutely fascinated by its mere existence. It's certainly among her finest works, that's for goddamn certain.
Was this always or never before? I feel it, the tilt of the planet.
For what it's worth, The Greater Wings is hands down one of the most beautiful album openers I came across this year. Literally, just listen to this one. You can see exactly where the appeal lies. It's in the lovely, intricate chords sprinkled over the dense yet delicate soundscapes undercutting it all. And Julie Byrne herself has that caramel-coated voice made to instantly grab the hearts and souls of anyone who listens. Her melodies smoothly falling in place along the atmosphere, simply becoming one with the music that surrounds her. The song is almost hymn-like in nature, with all-encompassing lyricism that could be translated to anything from romantic partnership to a deeper connection with the higher power. In actuality, Byrne wrote this song in tribute to producer Eric Lippman, who died unexpectedly during the making of this album. In fact, the ambient synth backing you hear in the song was one of his final contributions to the record, which, God, that fact alone just makes me tear up. Thus, this song draws out that potent sense of grief that would come to define the remainder of The Greater Wings, the album. But it's a sense of peace with this mourning, the acknowledgement to let these feelings in order for the healing process to really happen. Few songs made me feel more at peace with myself and the world around me than this one, and that's just goddamn important.
'Cause I forgot a piece of me with the
After quite a few listens at this point, I've come to conclude that the Redshift Blues is very much an album that works the best as a product of its parts. Nonetheless, well, I can't really deny the ceaseless magic of the song that got me to really check out Dispirited Spirits in the first place. I will keep this entry shorter because, well, I've talked about this album and track so many times now, but well, it's totally deserved. The entire record remains cool as hell, but I also can't deny the way everything comes to a standstill once we reach this track. It's got the firm swells and escalations of its math rock emo sound that keep me hooked so instantly, which includes a number of instrumental breaks that never fail to make my heart swell, even after so many listens. More importantly, you can tell Indigo Diaz is absolutely passionate about his material, his voice perfectly matching the intimacy of the quieter parts, then rising to a signature howl when these emotions crest toward the moon. If you haven't checked this one out after all the times I've recommended it, well, honestly, what are you even doing with your life?
Now I'm done. Hit a beat of the drums and go now. Have fun. Go on. We don't need other ones to have one. So have one. Someone.
There are a number of reasons why I named Young Father's Heavy Heavy as my favorite album of the whole year, and, well, I named a bunch of them in that video. But the one comment I want to expand upon is its propulsive tendencies, the energy the record inhabits that keep it moving ever forward with locomotive intensity. And not gonna lie, I specifically had drum in mind when I made that comment. This is music I absolutely feel throughout my whole body, from the very first seconds all the way to the track's end. I don't know about y'all, but I physically cannot listen to this song without moving my body at least a little bit, and I just can't stop until the song ends. It just has that strong of a hold over me. Definitely one of the most addictive songs of the whole year. And this part?
Young black gifted with ambition. Yeah.
Well, I sing along to it every damn time. It's a big part of why Heavy Heavy is not only the best album of the year, but one of the most easily replayable ones. Like I said, this is just straight addicting in its feverish intensity and layered gospel atmosphere, but also in its dense, playful attitude, one that implicitly promises better days just around the corner. Feel the beat of the drum and go numb. That's surely been a mantra I've tried to live up to these days, and it's helped me get through a lot of bad feelings this year. Long story short, it's a whole entire bop.
If a sighing breath, it's miles away. Will I still wait here for you?
Well, damn. what else do I say about this that I haven't already covered in my most recent subscriber special? Well, I'll say this. One of the biggest developments for me in 2023 is that I've gone from being a mere appreciator of Hemlock Springs to being a full-blown, bona fide fan. It's been so cool seeing her sound develop through these past months. I already knew she had massive potential with Girlfriend, but Sever the Blight is probably the most important track for her solidifying her mastery, at least thus far. This sound is incredibly engaging, roping in big synthesizer hooks with a terrific melding of new wave sounds to elements of chamber pop, and her voice is just so distinct and striking atop it all. It's a terrific example of a young artist simply shooting for the stars without a care over whether it all completely works or not. Except in this case, it sure as hell does. The possibilities for her future are absolutely glowing, I swear. Also, Loeco, if you're listening, I do expect you to follow up with another Hemlock Springs request come the end of January. Do not disappoint me.
It'll come to me later, like a space invader, and I won't be able to get it.
Spanish Love Songs may have released the Best of the National album this year, but in my humble opinion, nothing they put out this year was as stellar, as eruptive as Space Invader. Alright, perhaps it's not really a fair comparison to make, but could you really blame me with how goddamn good of a track this is? After the disappointment of their first album this year, I was so prepared to write this era off completely as just plainly not for me. But man, does this song alone make up for what didn't quite hit for me. The group has certainly mellowed out a lot through the years, but this song proves that even in their most downtrodden states, they can make music that continues to hit as well as their best stuff. Amidst its soft piano chords and light shuffling, the song delves into the topic of intrusive thoughts, that familiar anxiety that the paths our lives take are fully accidental. We know everything we know now as it stands, but what if this never came to be? What if some mysterious something else is being sacrificed in this familiarity? These thoughts are tender indeed, but it all comes together in the second half, as the intense drumming and guitar spirals build and build to a delectable climax. Absolutely could not get enough of this one this year. The guys may have gotten calmer since the 2010s, but this song proves that they can still stab right where it hurts the most, and boy am I real glad for that.
Rolling up, we bring in the light. It might just render you blind. We're working hard every day.
Kaleila's Raven is an album chock full of hot people jams. There's really no other way to describe it. The record's got some of the smoothest, most sensual sonic atmospheres of the entire year, and is a hell of a nocturnal vibe if I ever heard it. And Contact may very well be the steamiest of the entire bunch, if I do say so myself. As we head out for a night at the club, everyone faded and floating, deep bass groups penetrate the mix with punchy precision, all while the wavy synths themselves float around the soundscape, filling in all the gaps with that warm, indulgent smokiness. And goddamn is Kalela the absolute best one to take the helm here, with their vocals demonstrating a particularly commandeering presence that is nonetheless just so chill, certainly sultry. This is like the most ideal depiction of the absolute best night out, one where all the stresses and anxieties of the real world are left just outside the door, traded instead for positive vibes and effortless seduction. Because for now, it's Kalela's world, and we're playing by her rules. It's the kind of track that I just want to live in for as long as humanly possible. I suppose 4 minutes will suffice though. Can't indulge too much, you know?
So Satan, but I can't do this evil on my own. I haven't left the house in nearly 30,000 days. I sent you the image of a little yellow face to tell you that I'm sad about the emptiness.
Everything is a band I have an incredible amount of respect for, and Cold Reactor stands among some of the very best work I've heard from them. By sound alone, it's magical new wave goodness in all the best ways. This is simply some of the best synth work I've heard all year long, with bouncy twinkles offset by some more ominous buzzing tones, and this vocalist synthetic crooning balanced by a fair bit of falsetto. I love it. And this song is largely concerned with society's push toward technological progress, the advancements we've made therein, while humanity itself growing more broken and isolated. As we build our mountains larger and larger, the physical world around us becomes more shallow and problematic in ways that desperately need fixing. When will we know that enough is enough? Well, at this present moment in time, there's no answer. The gaps between our highs and lows grow ever higher, the new class grows ever more prosperous, and the rest of us bear the brunt of that weight in all our own ways. But despite the darkness, well, this is also one of the catchiest songs I've heard all year long. The staccato rhythms of that hook are absolute drugs to me, especially at the points wherein the synths get really deep and kinda scary. It's the kind of juxtaposition of light and dark I absolutely crave in pop music, and yeah, of course these guys are gonna kill it with this one. Seriously looking forward to this album next year.
Nears gleaming with the body count higher than a mosquito. With the body count higher than a mosquito.
Pink Pantheress? This surely is not. Alright, so in Dog's Body, model actress gave us what I have come to call the sound of the year. An abrasive dance punk flurry spearheaded by breathy vocals and spiky guitars, tracing an atmosphere that is both parts erotic and terrifying. This is music that was made entirely just for me, and Mosquito is the encapsulation of damn near everything that makes it so enticing. It's a wave of groovy beats taking place at the very edge of the darkest corners of the human mind, as evident by those blown out drums and metallic stabs. And, well, to steal a line directly from my best albums video, it's a depiction of the speaker's primal sexuality as a malady, starkly demonstrated by the mass obscuring of its pornographic subject matter to imperceptibility, but also in him actually equating his nights of unthinking hedonism to that of an infectious insect. Above all this, well, I know I just said Cold Reactor was one of the catchiest songs of the year, but god did the hook of this one find itself creeping into my brain space when I least expected it. Hell, when I least wanted it. And by the end of this song, everything that came before, the clashing percussion, wailing vocals, steamroller guitars, they all layer themselves together to a point of total cluttered yet incredibly addictive madness. And man, if this isn't one of the most cathartic climaxes of the whole damn year. If there's any one song on this list I desperately want to experience as a live performance, this is the one. Here's hoping this can happen one day.
When the day stops short and the sun goes down on you, and you did get done anything you wanted to.
Those who know me well have probably been waiting on bated breath for this guy to show up, and yep, here he is. I've spent this entire year fixating on Jeff Rosenstock's large body of work, and while Hell Mode is a bit of a ceremonial turn away from his grittier punk atmospheres in favor of a cleaner sounding pop rock environment, he's nonetheless as strong as ever. He's always been so great at displaying with such earnesty the emotional strain of simply existing in the modern world, with every force imaginable preying on our downfall. And yet with Doubt, Rosenstock centers the emotional core completely inward, his confrontational vocal performance hitting us at eye level. And it's the slow escalation upward of the mood wherein the magic of the song really lies. Each line he sings carefully peeling back the layers of, well, doubt that keeps us from hitting our momentum, all the distresses that urge us to move ever backward into the dark corners of our mind. And yet the song doesn't do this. It acknowledges these fears, forces us to confront that which we are unsure of, that we cannot change, and ultimately try to not be so debilitated by it all. And god, does the honesty on display here really freaking hurt sometimes. Dude can speak to my own personal anxieties like no other out there. It's just overwhelming. But by the end of it, when it all climbs to that powerful screech, willing the doubt back into total submission, well, things seem just fine for a moment. And that's just great.
Holy moly, you better take your chance. I'm here for one and only. No procrastinating.
These are the two genders for real. Seriously though, yeah, if you caught my review of the song upon the release of Heavy Heavy and then later on, you'll know that for no small portion of the year, this was the song of the year for me. Like I said before, this was an album that got me really deep in my emotions, the kind of music I felt in every pore of my being. And well, Holy Moly is likely this very phenomenon condensed in one singular track. I love this for a lot of the same reasons I love Drum, and in many ways they are extremely similar, though I will say Drum has a better hook overall. Nonetheless, where Drum felt relatively close and intimate, more of a body track so to speak, this is much larger, explosive, a soul track. That bass line that reverberates through the whole song still gets my blood pumping from the start, as does the gracious escalation in sound and texture, from a mellow toe-tapping beat to that absolutely full, vibrant atmosphere that I just completely feel, man. Honestly, the only reason that this isn't topping my list is, well, there were plenty of other tracks I revisited far more often, and these kind of songs are just taking priority for me this year. Nonetheless, the magic of this one has never worn off since that very first listen, and that's incredibly special. Hope someone else can get something out of this one as well. So here's the thing. I already knew I loved I've Been Young for months throughout this year. However, well, once I found out that George Clanton was not, in fact, a bedroom pop musician in his early 20s and was, instead, born a full 3 years before I was, well, that just made me love it even more. And don't get me wrong, despite any of that, this is just an incredible song, just on the face of it, with that extremely potent neo-psychedelic atmosphere, led by drum machines seemingly pulled from 90s Manchester, and especially that fantastic chorus with the whining synths and blooming haze aplenty. But again, this realization really differentiates it from so much of the so-called nostalgia bait of today's popular music. I feel like every day now, I stumble across a new song that appropriates some aesthetic from the 80s to 2000s, using these sounds as mere window dressing, and often for rather cynical purposes. And yet, I'm fully convinced that Clanton here is paying homage to a particular era that he himself has lived through, and feels some real nostalgia for, which only heightens the appeal of the subject matter, with the artist ruminating on his own cycle of aging. How he feels that, despite physically growing, in many ways he still feels as he did when he was a child, for better or worse. And this song balances that bittersweet element of the piece so skillfully. Growing up is something we all have to do, but indulging in our childhood impulses from time to time can still be very fulfilling, as long as we stay true to that which really matters to us. Really glad to have this song in my life. As I wrap up the scripting for this video, I decided to take a look at the songs I previously commended as the best tracks of last year, and, well, it's been interesting to see how qualities I most value in tracks I enjoy have changed in the past year. Namely, 2023 was very much an emotions-driven year for me. I connected to so much music this year in ways that went far beyond them simply sounding nice to me. In such a rocky year for me as this, I think I needed that. And all things considered, Prescription by Remy Wolf has been one of the biggest comfort tracks of the year for me. I'm usually not the biggest fan of Remy Wolf's work, but dear God, this is just on a different level entirely, and really demonstrates just how much growth she has accomplished as an artist. It's so clear that she really knows how to get to the heart of it all. Warm, romantic, jazzy textures draped across delicate synth-funk workings with a psychedelic twist to emphasize the summery nature of it all. And it's a really adorable love song, emphasizing all the tender, personal little moments between her and her partner. But with how she professes these feelings so powerfully, I can't help but be moved as well. Discovering the extended 7-minute version of the song was one of the best things I ever did this year. The only thing better than a great song is a great song that lasts longer. This is one of those extremely charming tunes where all the appeal is right on the very face of it. If you like good vibes, well, it's all here. I'm pretty sure it's gay as well, so even better. And yet, even today, I can still love a song simply because it does sound nice. Honestly, I'm incredibly tempted to just say, don't listen to me. Instead, you should go listen to this song and draw your own conclusions. I could reiterate again and again about the song's tranquil melding of shoegaze and post-rock, the abrasive fuzz of its synth guitar backing balanced out by jazzier melodies and steady percussion, all this led by a singer with perhaps the dreamiest voice of the entire year. As in, this is a dream of a song, in every sense of the word. And I can even emphasize how the arrangements here are just marvelous, every few measures carrying with it its own surprises, yet all remaining stunningly cohesive, all this coalescing to that magnificent bridge where it draws everything back. Delicate piano and strings set along these vocalists performing some of the most impassioned harmonies and pained screams. All this then slowly dissipating to a peaceful halt in an outro that damn near brings me to tears. I could go on and on about how this is one of the most potent examples of controlled chaos we got all year long, with a dense orchestration that builds upon its multitude of ideas to create what amounts to practically an entire universe within its brief span of time. But honestly, words can only amount to so much. Would highly recommend you just check this one out yourself and let me know what you think.
I work all night, I do my thing, just killing time.
Jessie Ware's That Feels Good is a damn good album, and also one hell of a playful album, deeply involved in its multitude of dance hooks and disco textures that really keep me moving from start to finish. Nonetheless, when the mood shifts over to Begin Again, the whole record seems to stop in its tracks completely. It's all the lights going down at the discotheque as the night's special guests makes their grand entrance. It's the party DJ making the executive decision to switch over from mindless dance music to music you feel in your soul. If there's any single way to describe Begin Again, I think grand just about sums it up. That hook alone is just marvelous. It's a statement of purpose, a ceremonial release of tension, a call to leave behind the superficial aspects of our lives holding us back from who we want to be, and instead start again, taking our own agency to make something better of ourselves and our lives. And the soundtrack to all this is a layer cake of Latin-tinged soul strings and percussion, further strengthened by some truly marvelous horns and Ware's powerful vocal delivery. It's a fantastic anthem for anyone leaving behind a fraught stage of their life, leaving behind the tears, the fears, the insecurities, with the glistening road of the future shining ahead of them. And the way it all builds to that absolutely thrilling horn break, well, it gives me chills every time. It's nothing short of amazing, even after all these listens later. I feel like I can never stop emphasizing just how truly great of an artist and performer Jessie Ware is, and I never ever thought she'd top herself after all she's put out so far. But well, it's clear that she's always full of such pleasant surprises, and for incredible gems such as these, thank goodness.
Don't kid yourself. Don't tell yourself that you're not evil. 'Cause
Jeff Rosenstock's Hell Mode was completed in late 2022. Therefore, the 3 summers of the song's namesake are those summers most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This subtext is all over the album, but spelling it so clearly in the title of its closing track gives it such an inherently dreary feeling. Personally, when those beautiful opening chords come in to set the stage, it brings me back to that utter, all-consuming bleakness I've always felt to some degree the past 4 years. It just gets me right back to that strange curdled feeling of fear and uncertainty about, well, anything. Everything.
how long can you defend against a cheat code?
But anyway, that's not really what the song is about. Throughout his whole career, Rosenstock has repeatedly tackled that age-old internal conflict of personal responsibility. How can we, as activists, protest against the strong arm of capitalism and the dehumanizing tactics of our leaders, when we, by participating in this very system for our own sustenance, are contributing to its supremacy? We can tell ourselves that these forces are so large, so far out of our control, and after all, we're only surviving. But at what point does convincing ourselves of this translate to an absolving of one's personal duty to work for the good of the common folk? He continues asking this question here, while also tying it into his role as a musician, the role his music plays, how much this defines him as a human being, what worth he has beyond this, how truly important his music is to others. And yeah, as someone who's very prone to overthinking, this absolutely hits me deep.
Sticking tight to my skin, squeezing out what's within that. At night keeps me awake. In crowds keeps me afraid.
And yet, what really makes the song so powerful is how it propels itself off of sheer optimism in anticipation for better days, despite the bleakness. It's a song about finding that special role, seeking warmth and happiness amidst a world where the future is dumb, or more plainly, unpromised. And therein lies another subtext of the album: climate change. The world around us shifting out of our control, the plain uncertainty of how much longer our physical environment can sustain our current way of living. And that's the thing, some aspects of living are just plainly, objectively out of our control. So then, why not just make the best of what little time we have here, while we still can?
Jump on bad wine. Stay young until you die.
Which leads to that powerful phrase around which the song hinges: stay young until you die. A brilliant subversion of that punk rock ethos of live fast, die young. Realistically, a lot of us don't die young. We keep on living, that's just what happens. And the responsibility to help others, help oneself, is inherent to living. Each day shifts into the next, and what we all make of this time is what's most important.
I sat around.
Deep down, we all want to change the world for the better, become part of something larger than ourselves, and whether you've got everything working against you and these innermost desires shouldn't matter. Where there is art, there is love, community, and ultimately progress. And I don't know, like I said before, there's no one else who can get quite to the core of my own internal stresses like Rosenstock. There's just a stark honesty to this one I can never quite get over, and I've yet to listen to the song without tearing up at least a little bit. Ultimately, there's just nothing else that really gets to the heart of the matter quite like this one, in all its in-your-face attitude, as well as its enormous emotional weight, telling it like it is, no sugarcoating, and then giving its listeners a big hug in exchange. And for that, I'm very happy to call 3 Summers by Jeff Rosenstock the best song of 2023. Thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you all next time.
Woo!